there, this is Joshua Davis coming to you with my Tinley Park Swordsoul deck. I placed 7th with a 7-1-1 record. My tie was to Sprite, my loss was to Pure Punk, and most of my wins were against Sprite. It was there in Force at the Regional, but Swordsoul was doing really well against it. Let's get into it. Right. So, starting off with the Swordsouls, we play what? Come on. 3 Moye. What can you say? It's your best starter. It gets you the draw and chain blocks the Yugioh, and you know it's always important to make sure you get that draw first, because half the time you'll draw into the Longyang if you don't already have it. Really strong card. Remember that you can foolish this off of Taya when going into Baxia, and then you'll get to turn Baxia into a Moye to skill go into Yugioh after. Next, we play 3 Swordsoul of Longyang. We really want to see it in our opening hand so we can make sure to search our blackout, because we are only on 1. He's really great, and if you're afraid of the Nibiru, you can start with Longyang to go straight into Baron before. It's also nice sometimes when you have a really great hand, you can hold the Longyang till the end, see if your opponent does drop Nibiru on you, and then at least after that you can drop Longyang, make a Baron, or make another Swordsoul 10, and hopefully out the Nibiru. If not, at least have something on your board besides just a big token. Moving on, we've got 2 Taya. I thought about moving him to 3 because he's still just a really good opener, especially with how many Tenyis we play. But as for now, he's going to stay at 2. Yeah. Next, we are on 2 Ecclesia. Some people like her at 3. I'm enjoying her at 2. She's also really great on the follow up, because there are some times going second where if you think you're going to be playing into an imperm, you can special summon her after using the Moye effect to still have a second tuner. So you don't always have to necessarily start with her. Also great Ash bait. Then, to round off Swordsouls, we're playing the 3 Swordsoul Emergence. It's amazing. Remember that you can also get into your Tenyi plays with it if you don't need to search a starter or a Longyang with it. And then finally, the 1 Swordsoul Blackout. I would love to play it at more, but yeah, deck space is tight. Its ability to summon a token does come up. Sometimes you use it to make sure you have 1 token on board so you can still use Tenyi effects engrave. Okay, moving on to the Tenyi side. We have 3 Tenyi Spirit Ashuna. It's the best one. We're hoping that we don't lose it. It's the one you want to see the most because it just gets you everything. Yeah, and with Nib not in the format nearly as much, seeing this and being able to, and locking yourself into worms is almost never a problem, because the Changying or Sinister Longyang is usually just a better board than the Baron in the first place. Next, we are actually on... Jesus, what the hell?
Uh-oh. Spaghetti-o.
Yeah. That's embarrassing.
No, that's fine. Larson has those moments too.
3 Adhara. I know some people like it at 2, but I think that recursion plus the tuner for when you do open Tenyi'd up is too strong. Remember that it can... it's only prevented from targeting this copy of the card when it banishes to add back, so you can Adhara, banish target a different Adhara, and add that back to your hand. Then We also are on 3 Vishuda, which also people don't like to only be on 2. I think that 3 is really great this format with Winda and Havnus running around. It's also pretty strong for picking apart splight boards. Yeah. And then we play the 1 Sithana because we are on Heavenly Dragon Circle. So this is how we keep going, or we still are able to go into our Yugioh if we get hit on the Moye with a Ghost Ogre or an Imperm. Moving on to the spells for Tenyi, we play 2 Heavenly Dragon Circles. It's great for dodging effects. It's also good for getting you out from under Mystic Mine, which is unfortunately still something we have to deal with.
Ban it.
And then we have 2 Vessels for the Dragon Cycle. Really like this too because it's so strong going into a opponent's board.
Whoa! I got hits. I'm down.
I'm a mess.
No, you're fine.
All right. Moving on to our generic spells, we play 2.
That's my window though. Every time it's just like I'm
Desires?
hit.
We would play it at 3 if we could. Great card. I had more than one occasion where it was my top deck and it absolutely solved the problem I was in. Maybe shouldn't be at 2, maybe should be banned, but we're not going to talk about that.
Maybe should have stayed at 1.
Also true. Next, we are on 2 Triple Tactics Talent. It's just a way to punish you, and it's generically strong going into most boards. It can activating talents if after they've dropped a toad on you suddenly makes it so they can't even chain the sprite elf because then you'll just take the toad. And then finally, 3 Dark Rulers. It's mandatory this format. It really is. And we don't mind grinding with Swordsoul too much. Moving on to the hand trap lineup. We are on every single one. 3 Ash Blossom and Joy Springs. It's a great hand trap against tier. It's still pretty good against Sprite because if they're on, even if they have Gigantic and a red, red's going to have to tribute to Gigantic, so Gigantic won't resolve. It's good if you hit it's forced by the Smashers, unfortunately, but it's still a very good hand trap, and stopping a Havanus when they try to use it on you turn 1 is also worthwhile. Then we are on 3 DD Crow. This one is, sometimes it's worth it to hold this until your turn. For example, when you're dealing with tier, sometimes they won't make the window until it's your turn, or they plan to make it on your turn. So crowing away the Shadal target when they attempt to, and just force them to make another Kick Kalos, or crow away the tier element that was going to do the fusion, is worthwhile. And finally, we're on 3 Effect Failures. It's not my favorite hand trap this format, but it's just too good with the Tenyi side of it to not run it. It fixes bad hands. All right, moving on to our extra deck. We are on this, guys. 2 Yugioh. 2 is all you need. You can revive it if need be. You can put it back with that heart if need be. We are on 1 Sinister Sovereign. It's just really strong. It takes care of the Tearlament Sulik and keeps it from being a recurring problem. It's also good on Sprite because you can just banish their extender after you imperm their their normal summon. Next, we are on the 1 Changing. This guy is an absolute beast. Sprite cannot get over them. Really, not at all. The amount of times where my opponent started building a Sprite board, realized that they would have to pick between Zeus or gigantic, and chose gigantic and was like, we'll just leave the Changing and try to stop them from banishing things, was way too often. Is very strong in this format. Then moving on to the Tenyi side, we do play 3 Monk of the Tenyi. He's mandatory at 3. You really can't get by with less. Then 1 Shaman. I've thought about moving it to 2 a couple times, but deck space is a little tight. There is 1 flex spot, but you might want it to be a flex. Reviving, and remember it does protect your monks or your tokens in combat, or when you declare in, you get to destroy theirs. So sometimes you can start picking apart a board by making a shaman, getting a Moye out, putting out a token, moving to battle phase, and using the token to crash into their big thing, because instead it'll get popped by shaman. Okay, then onto our last Tenyi card, we have the Draco Berserker. Very strong in this format as well. If you can go into him before you start going into your Swordsoul lines, it's great because you don't have to fear Token Collector at all. It will banish before it gets a chance to do anything. Also pretty good against Sprite, because you just banish their normal summon and suddenly they have to have an extender in hand in order to do anything. Alright, moving on to our generic synchros. We do play 2 Baxia. Very strong, shuffle things back, get to go break their board while still making Yugioh Chengying. We're playing 1 Yazi. It does come up sometimes your long young gets to hit the board, but they immediately pop it. You can then normal summon an effect veiler and go into Yazi, and Yazi is just very good at picking apart a board as well. It also does the same thing as Baxia, as letting you get to your other worms, or your other Swordsoul starters. And then rounding off, we have a Baron de Fleur. It's Baron, you can make it, you're going to play it. We're playing 1 Psychic and Punisher. Normally we make this by putting out a Tenyi and one of the Swordsoul tokens, and it can help you in really tight games. It's another thing that Sprite really struggles to get over, and this actually won me a game against Fluanderees. He poked me for 200 damage, made a Zeus because he couldn't really do any Fluanderees stuff because he was stunned enough. And then Psychic and Punisher hit the board, and he was very unhappy. Finally, this is a flex spot. It didn't come up at all at the tournaments, so it will probably change again, but we're playing 1 Underworld Goddess of the Closed World. I found myself never going into Chao Feng, so I decided to try something else out. The principle is pretty simple. If you start with Ashuna, or if you have Ashuna and some banished Tenyis, you go Ashuna into Monk, Ashuna effect special out the Adhara into Monk, Adhara effect add back one of the Tenyis you've not gone through, if it's Sithana, an Adhara that's been banished already, or a Vishuddha, add those back, special it out, make Shaman effect, discard a card, special out a effect monster, and then you turn those into the Underworld Goddess with one of your opponent's cards. It didn't come up. It's probably going to be changed to something else. But, yeah. Moving on to the final bit, we are on to our side deck. We play 3 Ghost Ogres. It's really good against Sprite. It has some niche uses against other rogue decks. If you see the Rite of Arimasteer, I'm putting this in right away, because screw the Brave Engine. Next, 3 Gamma and the engine requirement of Driver, where we really don't want to lose Game 3 to Sprite. Then we are on 2 Droplets. It would be 3, but something has to be at 2 to make room for the Driver. It's good. You can use it going into a board to make sure your Moye resolves as well. Then we on to our Traps lineup. We do play 3 evenly. Unfortunately, this is our only back row hate. might be punished by that sometime soon, but for now we really want as many options for dealing going into a board, and unfortunately just a single pop or 2 pops off of twisters is just not going to do it. And then our last thing, we are playing 3 Rivalry of the Warlords. This is our Sidon or Dark Ruler if we're going first, because it's just really good. You know, it keeps tiers from on only aquas or whatever fusion thing they have on the board, which usually isn't enough by itself. You catch Sprite, keep them only on Sprite, keep them off of Toad, or you catch them on Toad and they struggle to actually put out, on swap, and then they struggle to actually put out a Totally Awesome or do anything. It's also just generically good against most things in the format. That's it. Let me know if you have any questions. No point in trying to make a combo video with Swordsoul, you know your steps. Yeah, I think it's a good choice for this meta. People are really not expecting it, and people moved off it very quickly after it won Nats because they expected it to get hit. We'll see. It probably will get some hit, but I don't know if the deck will be killed. All right. Good night, guys.